to ride a horse here in New York called Boomtowner. And I rode him once, and I never wanted to ride him again. People, I think, underestimated how strong you were. Talk a little bit about Boomtowner, and then we're going to run some video, but how difficult was he, Frank?
Well, he had the reputation before I had the opportunity to ride him, and I knew him from when you rode him. I remember Angel rode him one time and said he never wanted to sit on this horse again, and Cordero I'm referring to, and Samin, the same thing. He was pretty well known. Diane Nelson was riding early in his career, and Butch Manzini trained him, and he had that reputation already. And it was the kind of deal where, I mean, I would have loved the chance to ride him, and I got that opportunity when Mike Husson claimed him. And one of the things that was prefaced on whether they were going to claim him or not, they wanted a rider that was going to stick with him and stay with him, and who would be willing to ride him. And
which I was not.
Me, and they asked me would I take this challenge, and I was like, absolutely, you know. And then there was a little bit of nope. But
well, his best races, Frankie, were for you, no doubt. The numbers prove it. Boomtowner's best races were for you.
We had an incredible run of success. I rode him for 3 years. When Mike Husson had claimed him, they took a shot and they ran him for $25,000, and they thought that nobody would claim him, or Butch thought nobody would claim him because he's such a trouble horse. And when Mike took him over, the horse kind of took on a new life, and he had a new rider with me. And I tell you, it was, when I look back at my entire career, there's a few horses that stood out. Extremely stood out, and Boomtowner being one of them, Pete Moss being another. But Boomtowner was definitely maybe one of the highlights of my career.
Well, we're watching you win the Boojum on him right now. He's about the half-mile pole, and you're laying second in between horses. And again, I knew how difficult this horse was to ride. And there were days, Frankie, he showed more speed than others. Was he easier to ride when he would show a little bit more speed because you could let him go to the fence?
You know, it was the scariest thing, and as a rider, Richie, you know this. As he got older, he started losing his speed. But what he would do, he would break a little slow and start off the first few steps a little slow, and then he would just take off. And that's where the problems came, because he would run up into traffic. And when he would do that, you would have to take a hold of him. And, you know, Richie, sometimes horse, that triggers the mechanism in his mind when he would start to lug in. And when a horse lugs in, that's when they bear in towards the inside fence, and it's very difficult to steer him. In Boomtowner's case, it was nearly impossible to guide him other than get to the rail and hope that you get some room that it would open up. But it became very difficult to ride him through a period of time when he started breaking slow and then starting to take off. He was going through his changes of being like a 6- and 7-year-old horse. It was scary. It was scary, Richie.
Well, you know, and listen, I knew that he scared me firsthand in Saratoga when he tried to jump the fence with me, and I stated clearly I didn't want any part of him after that, because you really couldn't control him. But you know, it's just funny watching, like, there he wasn't too bad, but I remember a couple of days where he just absolutely had you turned inside out. Yeah,
definitely did. And the Fall Highway was probably the most notable race where
you were third in that race, right, Frankie?
What's that?
You were third in the Fall Highway?
Yes. Should have been unsaddled. Should have been the winner. And I absolutely could not steer him around one horse.
Well, we're going to watch a happier race when you won the sport page with him while we continue to talk. And there was a funny story, and maybe you can expound on it, but there, you know, Mike Husson did such a great job with this horse, but he had this idea about working him the wrong way one day on the training track at Belmont. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
It's a funny story. And, you know, Mike Husson, he's very close to you and I, Richie, and big part of our careers. And, you know, Mike and I were very close, and he came up with this idea that we were going to try to work him. It's a funny story, but we're going to try to work him the wrong way on the training track. So instead of getting out, or instead of getting out in, we were going to see if it would blow his mind. He would actually I want to either go to the inside rail or to the outside rail and get out. And Mike asked me, he got special permission from the track and the outriders that late in the morning we were going to do this. And so he said, am I up for the challenge? And I said, without hesitating, absolutely. and there's a funny story with Mike and I. We were close, and for many years, there's one thing he says: if you can't do something, just say it. That's what he used to say. If you can't, don't think you can do it, or don't think you can handle it, just say it. So that was in my head, and the day's getting near that we were going to try to pull this off on a Tuesday morning at 10:30 after training closed. And the day before, I said, Mike, you know, we talked about this thing with Boom Tanner, and I said, I don't think I can do it. If something goes wrong, I don't think I have the strength to stop, from going worse. And Dennis O'Brien, if he's out there, God bless his heart, was his exercise rider and could actually gallop him. When a horse is ungallopable, Dennis could sometimes, be the man for the job, and he was able to gallop Boomtown. So he took the challenge of seeing if he can do it, and he was galloping around there. And Richie, I don't know, were you there that morning?
I was not there that morning. I just heard the story through you guys.
Yeah. So we're all standing around the outside rail, and we're all kind of nervous at this point. Hey, this could get very ugly. And Dennis galloped around to the pole where he was going to break off, and he never broke off, and he just hobby-horsed around there at a slow lope, pulled the horse up, and said, I couldn't do it. I couldn't. And Hutchin, he threw his hands up in the air and just walked away.
That's great.
But it's great for people to understand. I mean, and I'm sure you got criticism for like a race like the Fall Highway. It's important for people to understand how difficult some of these horses are to handle. It's not always that the jockey wants to do something and he can just do it. It's not like driving a car. These horses can be very, very hard-headed.
Yeah. And Boomtowner, when his mind was made up to lug in and not have brakes or steering, literally it was like pulling on a car. There was just all the strength he had. And Richie, during the race, I was exhausted before I even got to the top of the stretch trying to get him off the rail. Now, picture, my boot is, my stirrup and boot and leg are scraping the rail. And I'm in such pain with that alone. And the noise from the scraping, Jerry Bailey was in front of me, and he knew I was back there, and he knew not to come off the rail because he knew I could beat him.
Right.
And but as a rider, everybody was concerned for my life that day, and the other riders in the race were, they all came back to the room, and everybody hugged me because they thought I was going to go down. And but yeah, I mean, I tore through boots. I thought I was going to lose my foot in the race. Honestly, I thought that this was going to get very ugly, and that's how determined Boomtowner was to not steer and just go to that rail.
Yeah, I remember the race well. I wasn't riding. I was hurt, and I was home watching it, and just with my heart in my mouth because knowing what you were going through, and like I said, having ridden him once and wanting no part of him, you were very, very game. But besides being game, Frankie, you're a terrific rider, terrific person, a mentor to young riders, and we're so happy to have had this opportunity to visit with you today. And jockeyworld.com, it's .org, I'm sorry, jockeyworld.org, and I urge everybody to check out what Frankie wrote about his journey to the Eclipse Award. Check out on YouTube Frankie's racing term videos, and Frankie, as always, it's great visiting with you.
Thank you so much, Frankie. A true privilege.
Richie, Ernie, thank you for having me. You guys have a wonderful day.
All right, you too. Frankie Lovato,
Frank.
just one of the best, the classiest, best riders I ever rode with. Just a terrific guy.
Just to, I wanted to ask one last question. Maybe you can handle it. Where would you rather draw? If you draw inside, you can lose your leg early. If you're outside, you're fighting